You know, there's this thing called tension or suspense, something that some storytellers actually work really hard to incorporate in their fiction. Or if not tension, at least some kind of purpose, a way in which the audience can share in that feeling of consequence for a character's actions. I hate to say it, but just about every scene, event, or line of dialogue in The Neon Demon feels like a tiny little void. These empty moments that just steadily pile up to create one of the most meaningless movie-going experiences I've personally had in 2016 so far. In The Neon Demon, Ellie Fanning plays a young aspiring model named Jessie who has just moved to LA with the hopes of striking it big. Standing in the way of this dream, though, is practically everyone else, just about all of the other models that she encounters. And the atmosphere is not just extremely competitive, but downright cruel and ultimately sadistic at times. I think this movie starts off fairly strong, actually, and I was even a bit nervous in some of these early scenes just because the atmosphere felt so unsettling and so bizarre, and the cinematography so striking. Therefore, I naturally assumed that, just like any good movie, these things were going to get progressively more intense and unsettling. But in The Neon Demon, they really don't for the most part. Instead, it just kind of plateaus around the halfway mark, to then basically slowly crawl up to the finish line. In my opinion, the subject matter here just very quickly ceases to be interesting, and no matter how hard Refn tries to make it provocative, or lurid, or shocking, with some very occasional grotesque scenes, it still just ends up coming off as kind of silly, to be honest, or even desperate at times. I'd be willing to bet that Refn himself may have just got bored with his own material and ran out of substantial things to do with it. It's either that, or it was just an extremely weak premise for a film to begin with. And to be totally honest, I don't think many of us truly expected a whole lot of substance from this film. If anything, just because of the way it was advertised, and also the fact that Refn has been most notable for his sense of style with his movies. And I don't even really consider that a diss, because Drive, in my opinion, is the essence of style in film in the 21st century. But it's also packed with likable and complex characters, an interesting story, and just enough substance to give meaning to all of its stylistics. Not to mention that it's just really fun to watch. And that's a major part of what makes The Neon Demon such a failure of a film in my eyes, and that the one thing that I had going for it, which was its sense of style, still just feels kind of cheap. I guess at the end of the day, the amount of room you have to work with concerning style is greatly affected by the level of substance you initially have at your disposal, which in this case was almost enough to cut it. Now, maybe I'm being too harsh, or I'm overlooking something, and those of you that actually really liked the film are welcome to try and persuade me otherwise. But my hunch is that the mental jujitsu required in trying to extract any kind of substance from this film just isn't worth it, because the thing wasn't even that enjoyable to watch in the first place. I'll still admit, though, that The Neon Demon, very occasionally, especially in its first half, has its moments. There are some interesting scenes, and every so often a smart line of dialogue even, something actually worthy of thinking about. But for me, it just wasn't enough in the long run. Unfortunately, the movie just lacks that oomph we get with Drive. Some of you may say that it was meant to be superficial, or that it was meant to be shallow. But even if it was meant to be superficial, that doesn't really change my opinion that it sucks for being so. And that's really all this is, just my opinion. I don't pretend to be an expert, and I sure as hell do not judge anyone for loving this film. Refn is undoubtedly a talented filmmaker, and Drive is guaranteed to go down as a classic of our time, I think. The Neon Demon, however, manages to squander any potential of being something half as unique and entertaining as Drive by meandering along shallow themes and failing to find a way to effectively rack up the tension in its second half. The Neon Demon. More like the neon fucking sucks. I'm out of here.